So you need to get another person's point of view. And you say, what if my spouse won't talk with me about it? Then you go with your point of view to a neutral person and ask that person, what would you advise me as a Christian on this situation? How do you think I ought to handle it? So number one is to identify the conflict. Secondly, keep things in perspective. Solomon's wife heard him knocking at the door. Remember now, Solomon's got 700 wives. He doesn't want to wake them all up, so he's knocking very quietly, gently. And if she were in today's society, she'd look over at her bedroom clock and say, what time of the morning is this? What time of the evening? I need to get my sleep. Honey, I'm tired. She doesn't want to get out of her bed. Should she have? I don't think women should always give in to the demand of their husbands. Guys, being the head of the family doesn't mean that you always get to call the shot, that your wife has to always give in. But I do think that what the Bible teaches us is that husbands and wives have to look at their conflicts from every angle possible. You weigh the pros and the cons. A few days ago, about the time I began this sermon series, actually, there was a woman who called her husband having affairs with a couple of other women. And somehow she discovered and identified the other two women involved. So the three of them decided to get together and teach this cheating husband a lesson. So they did. And in most cases, we would be sympathetic and say, you go, girls. But what they actually did was criminal, horrendous, and stupid. And they get 0 votes of sympathy because they didn't handle this situation well. Keeping things in perspective means weighing the possible consequences. So many times couples talk to me about separation. And my advice is no. And next Sunday I will be even more specific in my sermon on that. When you look at the consequences, the possible consequences of separation, it's horrible. And it's not something that you can control. So we always need to weigh the consequences of what we're doing. We need to count the cost of winning a particular battle. Sometimes you can win and win at any cost. But you may have absolutely nothing left. Yesterday's newspaper featured a local story in which those being sued settled out of court. Not because they thought they were wrong, but because the battle was too expensive. And you see, when you keep things in perspective, you're not focused only on the victory, but you're also focused on the cost of that victory. Now you have two entities, victory and the cost, which reminds us that we have to decide if one thing we value, such as having a marriage, remaining married, outweighs another thing we value, such as having a clean house. Conceivably, a husband could come home, say to his wife, "What have you been doing all day? Clean up the house or get out." Is that really what you want? Sure, you value a clean house. Sure, I value having my undershorts rolled up and stuck in the right corner of the drawer, the top drawer. But if Darlene puts them somewhere else, am I going to tell her, that's it, I'm leaving you? Only if I'm an idiot. Because there's something I value than my undershorts. And what I value is my marriage. So we have to keep things in perspective. And then we have to choose a course of action. How are you going to make it happen? Now, before I tell you what you can do, let me tell you what you cannot do. If you're going to work on a conflict in your marriage or in the office or in the classroom, you cannot always be the winner. If you have to always be the winner, you need to live alone on an island. I absolutely hate these shows that pit 12 people against one another. And they do everything they can so there can be one person left at the end. That's not the formula for marriage. When we choose a course of action, it is not to destroy the other person, but it is for both of us to come out as winners. So you alone cannot always be the winner. And the other thing is, you can't rotate the victory. That means, okay, you get to decide today, and tomorrow is my day. And you think, preacher, that's stupid. I actually know of some couples that do that. Okay, you had the last call, I get this one. You make this decision, I do that. They have their lives divided into these neat little compartments. And they say, he makes the calls here, she makes the calls here, he's here, she's there. Everybody loses with that one. See, that's the problem. You think that would be a nice way to work it out. Win, lose, win, lose, win, lose. It's even. But every other time, you're going to lose. And every time, somebody is going to lose. Now, that's not a Christian relationship. A Christian relationship is win-win. It's where both the husband and the wife, both people involved, win. And the Apostle Paul told us how it's possible for both people to win. 1 Corinthians 13, he said you can choose to win-win by being patient. You can choose to win-win by being kind. You can monitor your emotions. You can choose happiness. You can protect your spouse. You can love God. You can hope for the best. You can remain faithful. Nobody ever got a divorce because of conflict. Conflicts do not destroy relationships. The inappropriate ways that we deal with conflict, now that's what destroys relationships. Maybe God's speaking to you this morning, and He's speaking to you about a relationship with someone in your family or a neighbor or your spouse. He may be telling you to be patient. You know, there is nobody who is more patient with us than God. And He's saying if you really love somebody, be patient with that person. He might be saying to you, no matter what happens, don't stoop down to the lower level of unkindness. You can continue to be kind to a person who hates you. Because if you return an eye for an eye, you'll never resolve the conflict. You may win the war, but you won't resolve the conflict. He wants you to know that there's no excuse for irrational behavior.